That is brought to you directly by the DJ at Hurt Michael, Mr. Music. If you need a DJ for prom, if you need a DJ for your wedding, if you need a DJ for your kid's bar mitzvah, he is the man to do it. Or a wedding singer. Michael Hurt can do it because that is what he is about. And so you can look him up. His phone number is 270. Just kidding, not giving out the phone number. But you can locate him on Twitter at Hurt Michael.
His drink for a second. He was like, "Is he really going to do this?"
He was like, "I don't even have your number memorized." But this is OB Coffee Talk. We are in the hub of the world, Owensboro, Kentucky. This is where all things are possible. If you think it's impossible, move to Owensboro because this is where things happen. This is where bad things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people and vice versa. Good things happen to all people. You know? Does that work?
Life happens.
Life happens, you know? Some by own choice, some by not your own personal choice, but we know one thing. Owensboro is the hub of the world. You know? It's the mecca of Mecca. It puts the mega in Megatropolis. It puts the K in kryptonite. You know, I mean, it just does stuff like that for you. It does. It's like, well, it puts the mega in Megatron.
It's the S on Superman's.
Yeah, that's what Owensboro is. Everybody here has tattooed on their chest not the S for Superman, but the O for Owensboro.
I've seen it.
Lived it. All right, anyway, we might as well move on from that. We should all get tattoos like that.
While drinking mint juleps.
For the Kentucky Derby. If you haven't picked your horse, you got to get it in. You got time to call Jay Diddy's bookie. Jay Diddy's bookie is out of Las Vegas, and he'll get you in on whatever horse you need. Win, play, show, whatever you need to put down. You know, trifectas, trifecta. It's not even possible. Awesome. But anyway, while we're here, it's to bring glory to God. That's what we're going to do. Is we jump in Psalm 111 through 118. I know that we were supposed to read two more than that, but if you were to read 119, you would have quit halfway through. So we decided to jump into 111 through 118, and next week we will embark upon the next journey of 119. All, 187 verses or something like that. So let's jump into Psalm 111, or any of those in there that you may have. Anybody? Logan's not here. Somebody's got to start.
Well, verse 1 is, it's talking about being in a congregation. And the first sentence there, I'll praise the Lord with all my heart. It's not the, I'll praise the Lord to please my neighbor. It's that intimacy, that relationship between the individual and God. A lot of people go into congregation and are worried about what people think, not focused on that intimacy with Him and God. They're not there for the right reason.
Yeah, that's a good point. With my whole heart, I had that highlighted. And how often do we do things half-heartedly? You know, and it doesn't even matter if it's with your praise. Your praise of the Lord includes everything. Everything in life. Do we work our jobs half-heartedly? Do we drive our cars half-heartedly? You will go 95 down Frederica. No, just kidding. I mean, anything, any situation, anything that we do in life, do we give it our all as if we're doing it for the Lord, or are we just kind of, I won't use the term that I've been taught my whole life, but are we doing it half-heartedly?
Are you half donkeying it?
Yeah.
That's And that's all things.
Yeah, it's got to be in all
That's,
things.
In social media, internet usage,
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be
at the gas
everything.
station.
Conversations
I
and
put
meetings
all
at
my
work.
heart into pumping my gas.
You know. I guess if you think about it, you sit back and you think about your routine in life, how often we blindly just do things. I mean, you could probably blindfold me. Same could be for Dustin and all of you all, and you could probably get to work. You could probably drive it. If no other cars are on the road, you could probably drive it because you've done
a
it.
long time being blindfolded.
It would be. Dustin drives 4.5 hours to work every day.
Feels like it.
But,
By choice.
you know, how often we blindly just do things and don't even think about what we're necessarily doing. You know, like Paul's got the Shekinah glory right now. He's not thinking about it.
You got to glow to you.
And then I like 111 verse 10. It goes back and it uses the old proverb that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But it goes into it that says, all who practice it have good understanding. You know, we oftentimes will encounter someone who says, you know, what does the Bible even mean? Or what does it look like? And it says, you know, by practicing it, you're going to have a good understanding. And how oftentimes maybe we don't have an understanding because we don't practice it. I'm guilty as anybody, you know.
My very helpful study Bible says that the beginning of wisdom is a wisdom expression.
Is a wisdom expression? Wow, that cleared everything up.
It's insightful.
It's insightful.
Thank you, Holman Christians.
I mean, just think about it. You see a guy on the road in need, or it's freezing outside, and you see somebody with nothing but a T-shirt on. You know you got 15 coats in the closet. Somebody walking down the road, no shoes, or worn out shoes, or nothing but flip flops, and you know people that are lost and dying, going to hell, and I mean just anything that we have in life. Are we, I guess it goes back to the routine thing with all my heart, are we truly aware of what's going on around us? And if we are, we can put into practice the Word of God.
How does yours says practice his instructions, and how does it end right there?
All who practice it have good understanding.
Yeah.
His praise endures forever.
Mine has all who follow his instructions have good insight, and I like the word insight there.
Yeah.
Well, I like practice more than I do follow his
do too.
instructions, because that practice puts it more of a action into it than following the instructions. I mean, following instructions, I can sit in my seat and follow instructions, right? Practice, you got to get up and do something.
Practice means do it, but I do like that word insight. I think that I have one that says follow instructions, have good insight. I mean, that goes back to wisdom. Have good wisdom. And when you're actually out practicing it, you're practicing wisdom. And I would think about Solomon. If you read anything about his life, you know, God said anything he's sharing with you, the Shekinah glory, anything, he could have had anything he wanted. God said, anything you ask for, I'm going to give to you. And what he asked for is he asked for wisdom. And you don't see him just sit back and just say, well, I'm a wise person, I'm just going to sit here on my throne and just be. No, he practices that over and over. You know, it's like just different examples that he has, and it's amazing to see how he actually doesn't just let the wisdom sit. He has good understanding because he puts it into practice. I guess with my whole heart is a thing I got to work on, you know. How about 116 verse 6? The Lord guards the inexperienced. I was helpless and he saved me. I think many of us can testify to that one.
If there were ever to be a checklist for the Christians, it'd be Psalm 112. So, I mean, like, we talk about how our Christianity is not a checklist that we, all right, I did this, but I mean, I can just sit here and look through several of those verses and be like, yeah, I don't do that. So maybe I don't classify myself as a righteous man then.
Right. He will not fear bad news. His heart is confident, trusting in the Lord.
That's probably pretty commonplace today. Fearing bad news. I mean, it seems like bad news is all around us. I think there's a lot of people, you start looking at psychiatrists or whatever, I'm sure they're, in the news media, they flourish on reporting bad news.
Bad news.
Bad news sells.
It's putting trust in manly things and not in God, really. When you fear like that, fear bad news.
We just got to remember God's in control.
When you hear somebody that's gotten a bad report from the doctor or something, I had a good friend that's been battling cancer for a long time, and he went back and he'd done chemo several times, and then he went back again and tested positive again, or they saw something that they didn't like or whatever. He said, I'm not doing it again. I'm just going to trust in the Lord. And he's doing the holistic approach to it or whatever. And the doctor, I guess, was expecting a different response from him, but he was all positive. And every time I've talked to him since, it's been, he looks better now. When he was on chemo and all that, he looked tired all the time and looked sick, but he's got a positive outlook, and he took the bad news as a blessing almost. You don't see that very often.
I know. It says he will never be shaken. He will not fear bad news. His heart is assured. He distributes freely to the poor.
Hello.
I don't know what his horn will be exalted in honor. It's something with God. Pertaining to him, I don't know.
It says he lends generously and conduct his business fairly.
Oh, it's a symbol of power based on the strength of animal horns. And so it's talking about God. His horn will be exalted in honor. He's strength in his honor. The wicked man will see it and be angry. He will gnash his teeth in despair, and the desire of the wicked will come to nothing. So, interesting to think about that, and where do we fall short in that? I like Psalm 115:1. Not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory, because of your faithful love and because of your truth. Not anything we've done, not anything we can do. I mean, I guess it goes back to a works-based versus grace salvation. We want to try to do everything, and it's not about us. It's because of his faithful love and because of his truth. We're but a mere vapor, a blade of grass that comes and goes. Grass withers, flowers fade. How about Psalm 118:8 and 9? It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in nobles. And how dependent are we upon man sometimes? And how often does man let us down? All the time, right? Every single day, you know? We're not immune to letting anybody down. That's something I'm always quick to tell people. Just because I'm a pastor doesn't mean that I'm always going to come through. You know, I'm a human being too.
That's the problem, right? Throughout phases of our life, there are times we do put our faith and trust in a human being, and more often than not, they're a human being. They are going to let us down. You know, to say that they never will, I think that's a farce for sure.
Yeah. And not that we should go into relationships or into getting advice or talking with someone saying, well, this guy's going to let me down. But don't put sole faith in a person. Just say, you know, they're going to come through for me. I mean, it's going to be okay. Well, you know, God promises to work everything out for his good, but he doesn't promise that everything's just in this life that we live. It's not just, everything's not going to be hunky-dory. Everything's not going to be grand. Everything's not going to go our way. The world doesn't revolve around us.
We can grow in tragedy, and God can be glorified in tragedy too. So
right.
If we're in that moment, you know, we think it's all bad.
I know. I mean, let's think about King David. You think David learned more when he was at peace with everybody around him, sitting down, just twiddling his thumbs, sitting on his throne, reigning the kingdom, or when he was in the valley of Saul trying to kill him, or his son trying to take over the kingdom? You know, where did David learn more about who he was as a person? It's typically not the mountaintop experience. I mean, think about Peter. Where did Peter learn more about himself? When he was, everything was going good around him, or when he was denying Jesus, or when he was sinking in the water, or Jesus had to call him Satan, you know? I think after those experiences, although they're pretty sucky in the moment, and
they hurt.
Detriment, and they hurt. They do. I mean, it's like,
look what the last person Jesus talks to.
Yeah.
You know, all the stuff that he said and did, and
yeah.
then that's the one man he chose to talk to last.
The thing about it is, if Peter didn't deny Jesus and maybe grow from that, he may not have been as strong when Jesus left. The Holy Spirit was here, and when the disciples, I won't say went crazy, but when the Holy Spirit started moving to them, when they let go and let God, you know, they may not have done that if they hadn't experienced that and grown from that.
Wow. Now, this is not to say to go out there and start denying Jesus three times and then the rooster crow and you know. But I think instead of looking at our situations as, oh man, this is disastrous, this is detrimental, let's look at it as, hey, God's trying to teach me something through this. And oftentimes we can really grow through those times. I'd like to say Israel learned their lesson, but they never really did. It seems so for a moment's time, but...
He defeated the Red
and
Skull.
go back on.
So, I mean, the thing is like, I think for the first few generations, they probably did heed what happened in the 40 years of the wilderness. But after time goes on, history becomes just that, history, and we stop putting so much into it.
And you start looking at even 9/11. As human beings, we do forget. You think about the first probably 2 years after 9/11, it was
Oh, yeah.
deep within us. It was like, those emotions. Those
Everybody was
feelings.
unified pretty well.
But the kids who didn't experience that, the generation did, they're just hearing about it. They don't have that. They don't have those feelings stirred internally, internalizing those.
Sit there and watch those buildings fall, and we're talking something that's just ingrained in your brain.
And but we do forget. We're 4 years, 5 years later, it's kind of. I'm not saying you should have that anger built in, but I think some of those things you do need to remember. And what does God say? He says, you need to pass this on from generation to generation. I don't have any specific verses, but I know we just talked about that when Israel, he's talking about passing some of these things on to their kids.
Yeah. It's specifically in Deuteronomy. It's either 5 or 6. Let me see if I can find it real
In
quick.
the Dukes.
The dudes. Because we are accountable, responsible for that, for passing it on to our kids. And my wife and kids think I walk on water, so don't y'all tell me any different.
Well, I mean, if you read Deuteronomy...
Technically, you do. There's water in the ground everywhere.
That's true.
If you read Deuteronomy 4... If you read Deuteronomy 4, it talks about being on guard. Be careful not to forget the covenant of your Lord. When you look at the heavens and see the sun and the moon and the stars and all the ray of heaven, do not be led astray to bow down and worship them. The Lord your God provided them for all people. And it goes on to say, like, he gives the 10... It talks about the 10 Commandments in verse 5. And then in chapter 6, it says, Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. These words I am giving to you today are to be in your heart. So that's... right there, it should resonate within each of us. But then repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And right there, that should be a challenge to all parents. Stop looking to the church to disciple your children. It says, repeat these to your children when you're on the road, when you sit down at dinner, write them on your doorpost, do whatever you have to do. It starts in the home. The church enhances that. The church backs that up. And so you're right. If we don't hide it in our hearts, number one, if we don't pass it on to our own children, then we're going to run into a cycle just as everybody else. Just like Israel ran into a cycle every 40 years or every 60 years or every 100 years.
If you're sending your kids to church to get a meal, they're not getting a meal. Because the church is meant to be a supplement more than it is a meal. Like, you are supposed to be providing the meal for your kids. You're supposed to be the one feeding your kids with the scriptures, with the love of the Lord. And then you send them to church for that supplement, the vitamin, their daily vitamin, their weekly vitamin. But if you're sending your kid to church to get a full course meal, then they're coming back hungry.
Yeah. And eventually that supplement, that's why church is so important every week, because you're getting refreshed every week, but eventually that will run out. You need that refreshment again. And if we're refreshing at home all the time, keeping that tank filled, then the chances of this continuing on to the next generation is even greater.
Like telling Christ, like when you get to heaven, telling Christ, well, I went to church every week. That's like telling your doctor, well, I took one vitamin a week. It doesn't say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Or it doesn't say an apple a week keeps the doctor away.
My mom, we were talking a few weeks ago. That's what she keeps telling me. She goes, I took you to Sunday school and we went to church and this. I said, Mom, I don't remember much about church. But we went and then every day, every week, every Sunday, blah blah blah. She goes, where were you at? That was her last thing she said. She goes, where were you at when we did all this? And I'm like, obviously I was somewhere else. I don't.
Somewhere other than here.
Yeah, I know. Because I'm telling you, I don't remember much from being a kid in church.
Yeah. I think that's why it's important for parents to invest. No matter where they go to church, it's important to invest in the children's ministry, because you're going to find out what they're doing, what they're learning, what they're talking about, and that's something that you can take with you throughout the week. and really start to show practical application through that. You know, if you're talking about, whatever happens in kids ministry, I'm trying to think of a lesson that they would do. Let's just say they go through the fruits of the Spirit. Talk about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and last week they talked about patience. Well, you take them out to McDonald's and the line's out the door, which will never happen at McDonald's.
You'd be surprised.
Oh no, I'm just kidding. In Union County, that's it.
That's all there is. It's that and Dairy Queen.
That's it. So, but if it's out the door, you know how kids get impatient. I'm hungry. I just want this. I just want that. Hey, remember what we talked about in children's church about having patience? Well, this is what patience means: is that we can't have everything right now in the moment. Sometimes we have to wait for things to happen, and sometimes the wait is better than getting it in the immediate time. And so being able to teach that practical application and learn that is so critical. But to be honest with you, what we've done as churches is we've distanced. It's almost as if we've created all these separate churches within a church, and we've distanced everything. So and instead of distancing ourselves from everything, we maybe should be more involved and pull it all together as one unit. And that way everybody's on the same page going forward, and it's easy to teach practical application. Because let's face it, if you aren't practicing it, you aren't going to understand it. No, why do you think we have a generation of high school and college students who thinks the Bible is hogwash? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's just an old literature book.
It's a guide.
It's a guide, yeah. Again, they see no use for it. They see no relevance in it, and it's important to teach that relevance and to make sure that we open up that opportunity. And we have to, the model comes from us. It doesn't come from them. We can't expect them to model it if we're not modeling it.
I think that's maybe where my parents, I don't remember, we went on Sundays, but when I came home, I don't remember us discussing church and Bible.
Yeah.
To me, it was just like, this is what you do on Sunday. You get up, you get dressed, you put on your Sunday best, and
you just go.
You go.
Yeah, I guess part of that's being there with the whole heart. Maybe you weren't there with the whole heart. You're not there with a piece of the heart. But it's got to. I mean, it really does, and I hate to say it always comes back on the parents, but it does, because if we're there with the whole heart and we're teaching our kids to be there with the whole heart, then they will be there. There's importance to that. So I guess we have to immerse ourselves in the Word, seek out understanding, seek out practical application, and then teach our kids to do the same. I think that's why maybe SOS and, what we do on going out and serving, it's important to take our kids to serve with us. Anytime we serve, how important that is, because what they're seeing is the opportunity to be the church. This is what we do in action. Why are we over here building a wall here? Or why are we digging out weeds here? Or why are we handing out stuff here? Because what we're doing is we're trying to be the church. We're trying to reach people. We're trying to engage people in their environment. And, so often I think we lose sight of that.
You never know when they're going to enjoy that either, because I just think about when we made the backpacks to take down to St. Benedict's. Little Logan looked at Melissa and said, if we make more backpacks, I want to take it to a different shelter. And I mean, that's huge for a 5 or 6 year old to say. The fact that he was so engaged by us going down there and meeting with these gentlemen that he wanted to do that again. So I mean, that's big.
Yeah, I mean, it says a whole lot, and our kids are watching us, whether we realize it or not. They watch us. They watch how we interact. They watch how we handle relationships. They watch how we talk with people, and they watch how we do things. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to mimic.
Yep. They're going to duplicate.
They're going to duplicate what you do. And, as good or bad, whatever the case may be, I guess not everything is good, and not everything is bad, but I mean, I duplicate a lot of what my dad did. You know, he did his best to instill in us how to help people and how to do that. And so that's something that I take value in today. And I mean, that guy would give his right hip for somebody. So, kind of did. But we never can lose sight of the criticalness that we have as parents. Yeah, they're a gift and they're a blessing, but they're also an enormous responsibility. And if we're not raising them to fear God, raise them in wisdom, and raise them to practically apply the Bible, then we're doing our kids a disservice, you know, and we're doing the next generation a disservice. So. Obviously easier said than done.
I just had the one. I couldn't imagine my dad having 3 boys.
I know. I have 2. My mom had 5. It's scary.
I guess that hence why my dad kind of ran things with
Keep you boys in line, you know. Yeah.
But just the analogy of God being our Father, I mean, we could have stopped at Creator. He's just the Creator, he's just Creator. But we purposely call Him the Father for a reason. That analogy it's not just an analogy, it's the truth, you know. He is our Father. Yeah, of course, He is our Creator of the universe, stuff like that, but, you know, in our Lord's Prayer, it's our Father, who
Right.
art in heaven. Not the guy who made us, the guy who made the universe, the Creator. It's our Father.
Yeah. So sometimes I guess a little overwhelming to think about.
Can you imagine having 8 billion kids?
I don't know, and then on top of that, not only do we have the responsibility there, but as a church, I mean, the saying is true. It takes a village to raise a family. And so guess what we're responsible for? The kids at church, too. And then what are we responsible on top of that? What about the kids without a dad? What about the kids whose dads are in jail? What about the kids who don't have a mom? Or who just don't have any family that... They may be physically there, but psychologically they do not exist. Okay? That makes it... That just mounts the pressure even more.
When Tasha would go volunteer at OMS or work at Newton Parish, he would kill her to see some of these kids. It'd be a cold day, 40 degrees outside, they're walking with a t-shirt on.
Yeah, shorts and t-shirt.
And she's just like, Mom and Dad at? What are they thinking? What's going on? She want to go home and get a jacket, sweater, or bring it back to them, you know? And that's...
We see it as teachers, too.
All the time.
We're not just teachers. I mean, you got to be sometimes the parent for them, too. Really, everybody's responsibility.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. But, you know, when they're sitting right there in front of you, you got to be the parent sometimes, too, to them. As coaches, it's another hat you wear as a coach. It's probably the biggest hat you wear nowadays.
Well, I'm a coaches, ice hockey coach, football coach. I look at them as parents too.
Yeah.
I think even kids who have parents at home, I mean, some of these parents are so absent from their kids' lives. They're so oblivious to what their kids are doing and what they're into that that's where we as teachers and coaches have to step in and say, listen, you need to start making some better decisions because mom and daddy aren't going to get on to you, so I'm going to start getting on to you.
Right.
So
That's why I never felt bad as a coach witnessing to my players.
right.
Because I would say easily the majority of the team, and I would say actually to go as far as say just a handful, they really don't want to hear the message of it. I mean, Just a few don't. The rest of them, 95% of them, they want to hear what you have to say, whether they're getting it at home or not, whether they go to church regular or not.
Right.
They would say to you one-on-one that Bible studies and prayer at the end of a practice and games, and they want that. And I found that out because when I went from being a head coach to an assistant, the new head coach didn't pray after practices, every practice. And I would have kids coming up to me saying, "Why don't we do that anymore?" And these are kids that don't go to church regularly, but they came, they miss that, they yearn for that. So it's not just the essentials of life, food and shelter and all that kind of stuff. That they want God, they're seeking God. So I never felt bad doing it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't. I guess that's another story. But we always kind of did it on our own. I know the schools kind of frown on the kids doing that, or the coach leading that.
Yeah.
I'm blessed to work in a district where that's very highly encouraged. It's highly encouraged. They want the ministers and the youth ministers in the school as much as possible. They want the coaches and teachers not forcing anything upon anybody, but being available to talk about any of that, whatever. There are some teachers who are completely caught off guard. Like they've done their student teaching in Evansville where none of that's allowed, and then they'll come here and they're praying before faculty meals and stuff like that, and they're like, "Whoa!" So, but that's cool. I do work in a district where that's highly encouraged, so I enjoy that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see. We can sit idly by. I guess that the practical application is this right here moving forward. We can sit idly by, and we can continue to do what we've always done, and you're going to get what you've always gotten, and it's going to be another lost generation. I mean, the kids that are in their 16 to 25 range are said to be a lost generation. They're gone. And we can. I don't think they're like. It's not. I don't think it's impossible to reach them. We have a job to do. But then on the other side of it, what are we doing with the next generation? Also, that's coming up, like Liam and Parker and Caroline and Riley and Cohen, and all of these people who are the next ones. What's funny is I always heard this growing up in all kinds of churches is. You're the future generation of the church. You're the one who's going to carry it on. But here's the problem. What investment are you making in them now to instill that into them? Because a lot of times they'll just say it and they'll just go on and not do anything about it. But
how are we equipping them?
Yeah, how are we equipping them? If they're going to lead the church, how are we equipping them? Whatever model you run in church, no matter what it is, okay, if you run a Sunday school model, how are you equipping the next person to be a Sunday school teacher? How are you mentoring the next Sunday school teacher? If you run an elder-based church where elders are the leaders of the church and they're making decisions, how are you as a individual elder pulling along somebody who's 16, 17, 18, 19 years old to teach them to be an elder in the church? How do we equip? How are we equipping these people to take over the next thing? How am I equipping? At our church, we run the leadership-based team. How am I equipping people to be the next leaders in the church? And that's what it's all about. It's about making disciples who make disciples. What you better be doing is working yourself out of a job and not letting the years run you out of a job. Where you get to 75 and say, well, I'm too dang old to do this anymore. But have you mentored anybody over the last
Nobody behind you.
Yeah, you're expecting them to take over. But how are they going to do it? I mean, it's the same thing. It goes full circle, round and round and round. And in coaching and ministry and anything like that, you see now not all colleges are like this, but you see a lot of people who do this. Is that I can think of just a prime example recently is the UConn basketball team. Think about them for a moment. Jim Calhoun was the face of the franchise forever. And when he left and retired from UConn,
He just jumped in.
anybody could have came and got that. But what did he do? He mentored Kevin Ollie. He trained Kevin Ollie. He taught him how to coach. He taught him how to recruit. He instilled in him everything that he knew about basketball. And Kevin Ollie's only been the coach for 2 years. And look at the success he's had.
He's a top-notch guy, man.
I know.
I tell you what.
And that's what I'm saying is how are we mentoring the next people to take over? How are we moving down the next generation to say, okay, let's step up and let's invest in this generation to make sure that they can lead, you know? All right. See you, Justin. I mean,
See you, brother.
yeah, I can do it. I'll put it in my backpack. Actually, if you want to take it now, I got enough charge. Yeah. So, but I think that's a challenge in any church is to say, okay, this is the model we're running. This is what it looks like. What are we doing to teach the next people? What are we doing to lead the next generation to step up? You know? Who knows what's going to come about of it? Who knows what's going to happen and where people are going to come from and the change that's going to take place. I think our churches would look a lot different, and nominating leaders in the church or instilling in leadership in the church would look a lot different if we were already mentoring these people. You know,
we just had deacon elections for ours, and as I was passing them out, I heard comments like, "I don't know, I don't know who I should be voting for," or there's a list of the ineligible people, and then ordained people and stuff like that. So it would make it a little bit easier for that. But there really, by the time a deacon election comes down, there should be no question.
Oh yeah, it should be easy.
There's 6 lines on there. That was it. You should have to add lines, basically. I mean, you should know exactly who.
Yeah. And how often we don't. I'm already thinking, who could be the next pastor at Encounter Community Church? And my goal is to start an internship program through the summer where I can just meet people. Who knows? The next person that comes and interns at our church could be the next pastor there. I mean, I know I probably have several years left, but it ain't too late to start. It's not too late to start instilling in somebody a leadership mentality. Why can't I train somebody through what I've been through what I've experienced, who's going to go on to another church and hopefully be way more successful than I am? Maybe a way better preacher than what I am. Maybe a way better leader just because I decided to invest in them. I would hope that I would have enough selflessness to do that. But sometimes we're scared of that because somebody's going to prove to be better gifted than I am. And that's a scary thing to know, or they might outshine me. Well, that's a good thing, Think about Paul. Paul was mentored by Peter, and who outshined Peter? Paul by a long shot, And we don't know the effects of. Obviously, the effects were great, but maybe Titus outshined Paul, or maybe Timothy outshined Paul. Maybe they were just such a greater influence, and it just keeps going. I guarantee the Sunday school teacher of Billy Graham, we know his name, but most people don't. And look at what he became. So I think it's an enormous job to do. And are we mentoring people, the next generation, the upcoming generation, to lead effectively, to make disciples who make disciples? I think that's what it comes down to. So we'll cut it off right there since we're about 10 seconds away. But thanks for listening in. Check us out at OB Coffee Talk on Twitter. And go enjoy this beautiful Saturday. Yay. And we're done.